There he is.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I believe I hear the guitar gently weeping in the background. Could you do something about that?
Hey, Buffalo Bill. Or Bungalow Bill. Buffalo Bill. I mean, we can do this, right? We can. I mean, I think I'm out of tune, and my tuner is dead, so.
That's fine.
Ooh, that's bad. But here we go. We can do a little, we can do
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Masters of Divinity, the 200th episode celebration. I'm your moderator, JP, and I'm here with Padre.
Hi, man. I should be like shirtless on the lawn. What's up, girl? I'm so out of tune. So we are talking. What are we talking about today, JP?
Today, we're talking about the Beatles' Get Back. Hey, you might notice we're down a guy. I hope you enjoyed the teaser last week. I thought it was actually well produced, well executed. You know, it was a creative thing that we all collaborated on, and it came out gold. I don't know if Matt's gonna be here. He should be.
Oh, is he pulling something?
Is he being
George or John?
George and John? He's more of a George and a John. I mean, we're going to be like Paul, where he's going to start breaking down in tears, like, and then there were two, right? Of course, that is the topic today. We did, you know, it is kind of funny how we arrived at it, because it just kind of shows, I think it shows how much we've evolved in our tastes and what we like to talk about. Because initially my idea was to talk about Masters of the Universe, the movie, with Dolph Lundgren, the canon, the classic canon film. And then Chuck was like, "Oh, or we could do the Beatles Get Back," like just throwing it out there. And I'm like, "Ooh, I want to talk about the Beatles Get Back." And then so once again, we are not talking about our namesake. We're not talking about the thing that all of our branding references.
Right, and considering too that there's like two new Masters of Universe shows on Netflix.
Yes, yeah,
and
like there's the She-Ra,
the Dolph Gun,
show.
And then the She-Ra.
Yeah,
it's three now. Then because there's the reboot, the Kevin Smith led like revisioning reboot of the original show, and then there's a kid-friendly version, like a little kids, like young, like Y7 rated version of Masters of the Universe, and then there's She-Ra, Princess of Power, in like the third season or something.
Right.
And we've talked about none of it. I've watched none of it.
No. It's almost as if this whole He-Man branding is just a ploy to get that 18 to 35 demographic interested in the podcast.
It worked for Mike.
It worked for Mike. I do love, like, he just said, I was just looking for a theology podcast, and one of them looked like He-Man. I was like, that's the one I'm going to listen to.
And the first one I listened to was us talking about Star Trek.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it works.
And now I'm just doing that thing where you're in a college dorm room and somebody just has a guitar and it's just randomly while you're trying to have a conversation. Just we were joking that because in the spirit of Get Back, we're going to try to create arbitrary guidelines and come up with a song by the end of the podcast, which we're totally not going to do. But I'm going to have the guitar here,
much like a episode about Masters of the Universe. It will never come to fruition.
But we have to do it this way because JP is going to start his acting career by starring in Return of the Magical Christian, which begins filming tomorrow.
Yes. So we got to get this done quickly. Everyone's schedule is going to revolve around me, and I'm not even going to say a word. But I will look very smooth. Just very smooth textures all over me.
So this right here is a little riff that I've been playing around with since college.
Okay. All my life in the ghetto, sipping on marmalade. I don't know. Why would I sip on marmalade? You know who ate a lot of marmalade?
Paddington Bear.
Paddington Bear, but also the Beatles during the entire 8 hours. Just toast and marmalade. I wish I loved toast as much as the Beatles did.
I have to admit something. So I around the time that I watched Get Back, it was around Advent. So Advent is also a time of fasting, much like Lent, but it doesn't get as much, publicity as a fasting time in a lot of American Christianity. Okay. But I decided to take on a Lenten fast, and so I gave up coffee. Not gave up caffeine, just gave up coffee.
All right.
And so I was like, I'm going to drink tea. And I was trying to do like green tea and all that stuff, and it just wasn't the same for me because there's a ritual around making coffee that I really like, and the idea of just sort of pouring hot water on a bag of leaves is like not the same in the morning.
Yeah.
But then I watched Get Back, and I saw just the copious amounts of like English tea that they're drinking. I was like, oh, I could just do that. So I started drinking like Irish breakfast tea with a little bit of milk, a little bit of sugar, and then I was like, oh, I think I would probably benefit from having a little bit of breakfast in the morning. So then I'm like, oh, toast, butter. I'm like, I've always liked marmalade. It put it in my head from those shows. So I spent to this even now. My morning breakfast during most of the week is tea and toast and marmalade. So I feel very much like the Beatles ever since.
That's interesting because I've thought a lot about taking up afternoon tea, like going full on British. I have a porch that I rarely get to use. And I need to put it to good use. And I feel like afternoon tea would be perfect for that.
It's great.
Yeah. Okay, so listen. Hopefully Matt will show up. Maybe he'll pull a George on us. I guess we got to have the first meeting. It has to not go well, as the title card said.
I know, it's the Miss and Matt blues is what this is.
I miss my Matthew. Where are you, Matt?
It's the Matthew Blues. Matthew Blues. Missing Matt Blues. Missing Matt Blues. Yeah, you got to go down for the blues, right? So it's Missing Matt Blues.
So, it was really difficult for me as a moderator, as a person who's sort of the skipper of this podcast in a way. Which is, if you're not familiar, is the person who's like in charge of the rudder of a sailboat. Because this series is 3 episodes long. But it's about 8 hours. There's a lot happening here, and I am at most a casual Beatles fan. And I don't say that because I don't like the Beatles or anything like that. I love the Beatles, and the more I learn about them, the more I love them. And the more I listen to them, the more I just never really got around to it. I missed that sweet spot that like you and Matt hit pretty early on in your 20s, I think.
Yeah,
and earlier than that, I'm sure. I was, of course, in my Nirvana phase, so in early 90s, and I think even a Kiss phase at one point.
Oh, speaking of that,
yeah,
just as an aside, one of my really good friends from my childhood, he operates surgical robots. That's his job. Okay. He's technically a surgeon, but he just controls the robot.
The opposite of a battle bot.
Yes. He apparently is doing a knee replacement operation on one Peter Criss pretty soon.
Oh, well, big ups there.
He called me and he sent me a text of him meeting with him. He was like, because you're the only person I know who'd be excited about the drummer of Kiss. I'm like, yes.
I don't know why, but I'm just imagining he just goes everywhere with his makeup on.
Yeah, he doesn't have the makeup in that photo, no, but I was like, it's the Catman.
But no, it was daunting because there's so much happening in this documentary. It's enormous. There's a lot to take in, a lot to process. It was hard for me, Chuck, as a casual fan, because there were things happening. I was like, is that important? And I'm watching some YouTube videos to kind of parse what other people are saying, and one person was like, they said that they freaked out when I think Linda gave Yoko Ono a piece of gum.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is that a big deal? I don't get it. They're just sharing gum. What? Is that a big deal?
Well, because the narrative. All right, let's talk a little bit about the pop culture narrative.
Okay, before we get into that, I just want to say like what we're going to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of break it down. So I think what we're going to really sort of talk about this massive series is, I guess, some discoveries, some new stuff has come to light about the Beatles and the mythology behind the breakup, about the dynamics of the group in general. Watching things just come to fruition, the songs just being pulled out of the ether is probably something we're going to talk about. And just the overall creative process, I think, is something. I think that those are the kind of things that kind of resonate with us and watching this. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the discoveries. You were saying, Chuck, about a narrative that sort of always existed and how this sort of subverts that narrative a little bit, right? Is that where you were going?
Right. So the standard the before Get Back, the BGB era, was that the Beatles were having a tense relationship with each other. We're kind of starting to be at each other's throats. They went to hang out with the Maharishi in India, and that as an attempt to kind of like help that out. It didn't really work. Somewhere in that period, Brian Epstein, their longtime manager, died unexpectedly, and they started. Yep. And so they started having a lack of cohesion as a group. But while they were with the Maharishi, they had started working on a number of songs and all of that stuff. And that was the beginning of the White Album. Right. The White Album, The Beatles is the official name of that album, comes out. And people are really kind of surprised that it's basically a bunch of solo projects rather than a bunch of stuff them as a band put together.
Right.
So around this time, John Lennon has left his wife, Cynthia, while having a relationship with an artist named Yoko Ono. The public is quite scandalized by this. I will say one discovery in this, and I'll get that in a minute, was I was to realize just how scandalized people were by John and Yoko's relationship. Like, I just never knew that it was such a big deal, but I'll get to that in a minute. And that John's obsession, and that Yoko being around, that she sort of inserted herself into the life and politics of the band and put a wedge between everyone, and that no one liked Yoko. No one liked her presence. They were suspicious of the fact that she was around during the recording process of this album, and everyone thought that this was and everyone saw it as she's the one she's the wedge. She's the she-devil that has come into the group to break the group apart, and at this point the Beatles are at each other's throats. They hate each other. They're barely holding it together. This project that they've come up with to put together a movie and an album is ultimately their undoing. They managed to rally again to put together Abbey Road, which is released before Let It Be. But everyone sort of looks at Abbey Road as a Paul McCartney project. It's more his thing, what he wants to do, rather than a true, proper Beatles album. And then the band ends. And this isn't helped by the fact that it's well known that George left the band during the process of the Get Back recordings. The gossip column had picked that up. Yeah. Ringo had left the band earlier over reasons I can't exactly remember. But yeah, so the popular thing is that the Get Back sessions are just a group of guys who don't like each other trying to play at being the Beatles.
Right.
And if you watch Get Back, you find out that is absolutely not the case.
Not at all. I was very surprised. I was taken aback. So let's kind of set it up a little if you're not quite in the know. I'm not sure why you'd be listening if you aren't in the know, but I hope you've watched it. But if not, basically they have the Beatles have, was it 20 days to cut a new album, prepare
from
for
start.
Yeah,
they have no material.
Yeah, they want fresh material.
Yeah, this isn't like the White Album where they had worked on a bunch of songs while they were with the Maharishi. They had nothing.
Yeah, so they have 20 days to to cut an album, and then they have to they're preparing for a TV show, right? Like a live performance on television.
Yeah, first live performance since Madison Square Garden when they quit performing live because the audio equipment like couldn't keep up with the crowds.
Right. And the reason why they have 20 days is because Ringo, as we all know, went on to star in one of the most successful pictures of all time, The Magic Christian, opposite
with Peter Sellers. Yes.
Right. So this is all Ringo's fault.
Hello.
There he is. Hey, he's here.
Oh, he was there. Oh, there he is. All right.
I'm here.
You pulled a John Lennon on us.
That's how I roll. So you're
Matt,
going to be staring up at the oven. Go ahead.
I was just kind of setting the stage for what the documentary is all about. And we just had a good laugh about how it's all Ringo's fault that they had such limited time to come up with something because he was starring in the world-famous, legendary cinematic classic, The Magic Christian. I was really surprised that they didn't hate each other. And also, Yoko didn't really do anything except knit and read the newspaper and do calligraphy and give Linda McCartney a piece of gum.
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? Because what brought that up was you remarking how people were freaking out about that.
Yeah.
That particular instant. And the thing is the whole idea was that everyone hated Yoko. But that showed they were just girls, they're just ladies hanging out, giving each other gum. Just a great little casual moment to show that there was no like animosity or acrimony against one another.
No, and it's kind of funny because it's like the decades of boomer humor that surrounded Yoko Ono.
Right.
I mean, I remember like the sort of the famous Dennis Leary bit about how a guy had 6 bullets and none of them hit Yoko when John Lennon was assassinated.
A woman does not deserve the hate she gets.
No, not at all. I mean, she's a little weird.
Yeah.
But that's why John Lennon loved her.
Because he was weird.
I mean, she's very weird if you've heard her music, but weird is not a reason to be hated. I embrace weird. I'm weird, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I actually, maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself because this is so much more towards the end, but I really loved the part where whenever Yoko kind of joined in on the singing, she did her weird, Yoko yelling into the microphone. When Heather McCartney showed up and she saw Yoko doing it, and so she started doing it too. I thought that was kind of adorable. Like, oh, that's what singing is? Okay, I can do that.
All right, John. All right, JP. Yeah. Give us some Yoko screaming.
All right, you ready? I hope none of our audience has cats.
So Matt, we also talked. That'd be funny if I break my guitar out and we create an arbitrary thing. We're going to try to come up with a song by the end of the podcast.
Oh, okay.
We already had the Miss and Matt blues going for a little while here.
Yeah, you want to show them the Miss and Matt blues? It's a work in progress.
Miss and Matt blues.
Nice. It's something. But...
Well, I just want to say, but I think that what's kind of amazing about this documentary kind of reshaping history is it's almost like the opposite of what Disney is known for, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because the big thing about Disney is like they very heavily re-envision things from like history to old fairy tales. Like the whole idea that like they took these sort of frankly terrifying folk tales and turned them into children fairy tales is a very Disney thing to do. And even the sort of revisionism of their own historical figures, like Walt Disney, not showing him smoke in that one movie that was Saving Mr. Banks. Although they did not shy away from him coughing, which is, good for them. But this is sort of the opposite of that. This is not revisionism. This is actually showing what really happened. And one thing I really loved about it was that I kind of liked just having it on. I liked that it was just like a fly-on-the-wall style documentary, cinema verite. There was no interjections from like D. Snyder. Be like, man, the Beatles were like the best, man. I mean, no offense to D. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many of those documentaries that have all those talking like, oh, we had to chime in from today's stars to hear like about their influence or whatever. But thankfully, Peter Jackson did not do that. And so I like just being able to hang out with the Beatles because that's something. This is a kind of document I think that's never really existed before in terms of like getting to know the Beatles.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like you're hanging out with the Beatles.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like I honestly could have gone for another 8 hours.
I could too. I mean, I hope this kind of busts open a whole new genre. Like, I would love to see something like this about like the making of Star Wars.
Oh,
there is.
I want to see the making of Graceland. That's what I want to see.
There is a very long, exhaustive recording of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg just like brainstorming Indiana Jones, just coming up with the character.
See, that would be cool to watch.
It's all transcribed. You can read it. But it's like 8 hours long, I think. But like it's just them coming up with Indiana Jones. I would love to hear that. Like if someone kind of took that, and I also kind of think it's sort of feeding into this. I think this new trend is sort of evolving. That kind of came along with the pandemic, and also sort of like the trends of like things like ASMR and ambience. Like you and I were just talking about how you just found a sort of Star Trek ambience videos with the nasals that you can just listen to all day while you do work. I think that's sort of the beginning of a new genre, and there's even YouTubers who make like 6-hour long videos, and they're becoming like immensely popular because people like to just have them playing while they do stuff. Not so much in the same way as a podcast, maybe in the same way as a podcast. I don't know, but it's slightly different. So those are sort of my reactions as like a casual Beatles fan. And of course, I'm always a fan of like watching the creative process happen, especially when you're trapped in a studio and you have to bounce things off of each other and you just watch them pull stuff out of the ether. I'm interested in what you guys think, just sort of overall. Like, was it I don't know. Well, I want to know what you guys think. Who wants to go first? Just sort of general comments.
Well, I don't have much to go with because like big Beatles fan, but it almost was too much like hanging out with them.
That was kind of overwhelming.
To the point where like I'm listening to you talk and I'm going, I'm not even sure I watched it. It was on, but I don't think I watched it. Like,
yeah,
I just was like hanging out in the room with them, doing what I needed to do while they're like, changing history and stuff. And I'm just like, whatever, I'll just do the dishes or finish what I need to do in the office. You guys keep writing your thing. I'm going to be sending my letters for work. Like I'm listening going, wait, what did happen? It was just, there was a whole lot of like, I felt like I was sitting on a stool in the middle of the room watching them work and I was just doing my thing. Like,
yeah, you're one of those guys.
Do your thing, I'm going to do mine.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that was there in the background.
Yeah, it's kind of like if I were probably the guy recording it. He probably has no idea what he records, He's just like, yeah, I'm going to hit play and then, oh crap, I need to charge the battery and plug the camera in and change the film. And like they're talking and he's just going, oh, and I got to get home tonight and make dinner. And it's what I felt like.
I mean, without I'll get into some more other stuff, but I just want to know, one of the things I loved watching it is just the little details, like I loved that there were ceramic coffee mugs kind of just everywhere. And I love watching like Mal Evans bring in plates of toast just all the time. And the like, people have newspapers, there's not like phones. Nobody's just sitting and playing on their phone. There's not like phones plugged in, charging everywhere. And, there's just all these, people hanging out, hangers on, just around, just hanging out. And to see, that sort of the group of people that were in the orbit of this band that we have mythologized and we've almost made them like otherworldly beings. Right. To see, like have a moment where Ringo is sitting in the processing booth and it's just like, I farted, it was just great to see these very human people, and especially John Lennon, because John Lennon, to me, his image was very crafted, and the kind of person that he was very crafted. He wanted to, when he was the artist, the tortured artist, he wanted that to be the image that you saw. When he was the radical peace activist, that was the image you saw. He was very serious in a lot of the public stuff that was out there, at least the stuff that I've consumed, like books of his and books about him that I've had, and things like that. To see him just goofing off playing skiffle music with Paul was just such a great thing to watch. Right. To note what day he washed his hair was kind of, you knew what, because he had some greasy hair, dude. They all had a kind of greasy look to them.
Yeah.
And was it John, for continuity's sake, to me, that comment, who wore the same shirt and vest combo for several days in a row? And because he makes a comment about it, he's like, my underarms, he's like, are probably disgusting right now because I keep wearing this for continuity's sake. Because they were all asked to wear like the same outfits for continuity.
What a dumb idea. That's.
Hey, blame Hogg.
Michael Lindsay Hogg.
Yeah.
Blame
that hog.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of like Matt. I was like half and half. There are times where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna witness history, and I'm gonna write down all these notes. I started writing down like everyone's names. Like as soon as they popped up on screen, I'm like, I have my steno pad and I'm like writing down all the names so I know like who everybody is. And after a while, like they just kept introducing new people more and more and more. I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. It's not going to help me. But then like every now and then I would just kind of zone out and like, hop on Twitter, but then kind of zone back in and like witness, Get Back just forming out of nowhere.
Well, I mean, it was watching what I would still say is one of like the greatest bands ever, just because of what the impact they had on history and stuff. But watching it and going, well, this is a lot like being at the rehearsals for the friend of mine from high school who had his own band, and their music was not history making, but watching them sit around and being like, yeah, this is cool. I'm like watching the garage band, man. Maybe someday it'll be something. And it's like I'm sitting there just just hanging out with the guys, with this George and John and Paul and Ringo, and let's just see what happens. But it, to the point though where, like I said, I found myself going, wait, I don't have any idea what I'm watching. I'm just hanging out with them, letting my mind wander on everything I need to do.
Right. See, I watched this. I didn't even have a phone in my hand. Like, I just was like rapt attention for 8 hours, not straight. I broke it up over several days.
Right.
But I was really fast. I mean, I wasn't like, oh, here's this. I got to watch this, because I'm gonna catch some kind of historical, thing or whatever. Like, the whole thing was capturing, some historical stuff, and the fact that Peter Jackson wanted to use footage that hadn't been seen in the first documentary, the Let It Be documentary, the one that added to the idea that this was a really acrimonious time, the way it was edited. Which, by the way, I think the reason why Let It Be was edited the way it was more a reflection of the bitterness that people had toward the Beatles breaking up. Right? People are looking for someone to blame. Someone looking for, all that stuff. And I think people were just angry at them.
Well, you had mentioned something. You and I were talking last week after the episode we recorded just a little bit. You had mentioned something about how Hogg was probably trying to make things a little bit more sensational just to have like a different view of like what how people view the Beatles.
Yeah, so Brian Epstein, their manager, discovers them, right? They're discovered as just, there's this rock band, and they're drawing big crowds in Germany. And so Epstein realizes that he has a marketable product on his hand. And so he creates the Beatles as we understand them, right? The mop tops, the matching sort of Mandarin suits, the whole thing. And Epstein is really big on maintaining them as a sort of clean, family-friendly, like a boy band. They're good lads.
Yeah.
The idea that they've come from just busted Liverpool and, had been like, we're not unfamiliar with popping like benzene or whatever. Epstein, hid the fact that they were smoking weed and starting to experiment with drugs. And, it was, they had this very particular crafted image the public had. And I think as people learned that it wasn't so squeaky clean, there was scandal. That's why I mentioned the whole Yoko Ono thing, right? So, John married Cynthia pretty early on. If I remember correctly, they even hid the fact that John was married because there was concern that, like, the girls wouldn't buy their records if they thought they didn't have a chance with John.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so they downplayed all of that. And I think when it found out that he was married to Cynthia, that I feel like I recall reading something somewhere, she was like the most hated woman in the world or something because, like, she took John or whatever, and he had a son with her. They'd been, I feel like they were even married before the band was big. But, John just straight up, like, cheated on her with Yoko. And just sort of decided he was just done with that marriage, and then was with Yoko, and they were, and I'm almost positive too that their divorce wasn't even finalized until after Let It Be. So during this session, he's still married to Cynthia, and Yoko's around, and so people are, so I think part of it is they're scandalized with the fact that here's like this supposedly upstanding young man who's just openly cheating on his wife.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in just good old, let's talk about classic British racism, she's Japanese. And so why would he leave this good Anglo girl for this Japanese avant-garde artist?
Right.
So I think there's that in the background. And so she becomes a convenient target to blame in the breakup of the Beatles, right? She's literally the alien, right? She's the Japanese woman who came in and changed everything. But what you see with Get Back is the real reason the Beatles broke up was far more boring. It was that they were growing up,
right?
And they wanted to just do different things in life. And one of the things that you talk about surprises, to realize that they were all under 30 while making this, just blew my mind. And to start thinking about where I was at that age, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I didn't want to do the same things that I was doing in my early 20s by that time. And they had been a band this whole time, and they were just looking for something else to do. And they just, they just wanted to go their separate ways. And I think there was some resentment on, there's definitely some animosity and resentment between Paul and John over this. I mean, because obviously there was some harsh stuff exchanged between the two of them over the years. They stopped being friends for a very long time. And if like, they wrote songs kind of sniping at each other after the Beatles were broken up. But I also wonder, reading an interview with Paul recently after Get Back came out, he talked about how he bought into the narrative of how things ended with the Beatles because of the Let It Be documentary, the original documentary. Yeah. And he said watching this again made him realize that his memories about the whole thing were wrong. And so that makes you wonder too, like, how much animosity did John and Paul have toward each other because of this kind of crap? Mm-hmm. It itself was manufactured. Because I mean, think about it. You're picked up in your 20s. You don't know much in life, and you have somebody telling you, "Here's how to live. Here's how to act. Here's how to present yourself." And then that person just dies, and you're trying to carry on. Like, your whole life is manicured and managed. And I just think that there's a lot of manipulation that went on with these people.
That's probably true. Time. And that's something I think a lot about, is how the Beatles grew up. When you consider that when they first got together as the Beatles, the whole point of their branding was that they all looked alike, right? They all had the same haircut. Mm-hmm. They wore the same suits. They all had the same accents. They're all from Liverpool.
Right. And it created that, sorry to interrupt, but it created that thing that we saw later with like the Spice Girls, right?
Yeah.
You know, like the fact that we had like Sporty Spice, Posh Spice, you have Cute Beetle, Quiet Beetle.
Yeah, or like the Wonders. We all know what happened to them. Formerly the
Yoni Eaters.
Yeah. Tale as old as time. But
I wish I knew doing that thing you do. I'd play it.
But that's the thing that really stuck out to me, is that the reason why it ended is because you can't just be the Beatles. Like, what does it mean to be the Beatles? Like, you're going to grow up, you're going to become a different person. They outgrew whatever this machine was. You know,
right.
They were growing beyond it. They were becoming their own people. You know, John was becoming very involved with avant-garde stuff and becoming an activist. Paul was wanting to be more of a family man, which is hilarious because he was like 25 years old.
Well, and their musical tastes too were different, right? Because like you said, John's doing a lot of the avant-garde stuff. I mean, you think about, like,
so was Paul, I guess.
Right? Yeah, Paul did some. Because a lot of people are actually surprised that Paul McCartney is the one who did Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's a John Lennon piece, but that was Paul. But John, of course, did like "I Am the Walrus," which draws from the poetry of Lewis Carroll, so it's a very strange, weird song. But Paul, of course, gets accused of wanting to do what John would call he would talk about faggy stuff, like he wanted to do like all these gay little love songs and stuff, and that led to Paul writing that song "Silly Love Songs," which is a rebuttal to John. But that was sort of Paul's much more like a pop rock guy,
right?
And John is more of was wanting to do more like weird stuff.
But what I'm trying to get to here is that the being the Beatles meant like selling out stadiums and being this huge machine, and it didn't mean being a musician anymore, where you just like a few guys making music. It was so much bigger than that, and they didn't want to be that anymore. They want to just be musicians. They want to make music with my mates, like that was like their whole thing. And even Peter Jackson, I watched an interview with him on Colbert, where he said that it actually kind of reminded him of Lord of the Rings, when Frodo says, we saved the Shire, but it's not like the world for me, or something, like it didn't save me. So it's like he can't live in the Shire, this world that he saved. It's kind of the same thing. They can't really be the Beatles anymore.
Right.
They can't like make music and be the Beatles. They have to do their own thing. So I don't know. I find that to be like really fascinating, and also it I think it really speaks to our kind of current pop culture climate, where we want things to exist forever. So and it's interesting kind of watching that unfold, because when you see them together recording this, you see their distinct personalities and how they're interacting with each other, and how there's some friction, and how they're getting along. Like I was constantly feeling bad for George, not so much Ringo. Ringo didn't seem to care, but whenever like John and Paul would start like riffing off one another, there's like a part where they're actually like eye to eye coming up with a song, and George is just like off the side, like okay, like I have songs too. And he's like, I think I'm leaving the band.
Yeah, well, and as I've said before, the masterpiece that is All Things Must Pass is just nothing but songs that George had written that the Beatles had just not stuck in.
Right.
But what, of course, is fascinating is they do play All Things Must Pass.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's the song they play. Or is it My Sweet Lord? One of the two they play.
I think it was All Things Must Pass. And I only know that because I watched a YouTube video that said it.
Yeah, and I love watching the Beatles play All Things Must Pass. That was so cool, because I love that song. I love that album.
And I will say, like, if we're going to get into some parts that we liked, I loved that after George left, it just became like a metal show.
Yeah.
Like, they just started wilding out, like, just going nuts, losing it. I think that's when they brought Yoko in just to start screaming in the mic.
Oh, speaking of bringing people in, Billy Preston, guys.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Ah, man, I love that guy.
Yeah, the mood totally changes when they bring him in.
Well, I think and that was the plan. Was he was the fifth Beatle? They wanted him to be a permanent addition.
Right.
And I wish that had happened because he's such a good. He was so good, and he brought just such a new life and energy into what they were doing.
And yeah, even though I'm a casual fan, I actually didn't know that he was on the roof with them.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
He is also the only person outside of the four Beatles to get a songwriting credit on a Beatles album.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, other than like their early stuff where they're covering people or whatever, but
yeah, I did think it was pretty awesome. Like when he comes in, like the mood, the vibe just completely changes. And I think even George even says like, doesn't even say like good vibes. But yeah, they loved that guy. They loved his music. He was a great keyboardist.
Can we talk about real quick the just casual drop of like George leaves the band and the next day they're like, well, I guess we just bring in Clapton. Like, yeah, just get Eric Clapton, no big deal.
You could get Eric. Yeah, and they did that again because they were talking about making Billy the fifth Beatle, and I think George was like, "Oh yeah, we can get Dylan too. We can get Bob Dylan. He can be the sixth one." It's like, "Oh yeah, let's just keep bringing in people."
It just becomes a traveling Wilburys at that point.
Yeah. Matt, were there any parts in particular, like throughout the series, that stuck out to you that you enjoyed?
No.
Really? It wouldn't surprise me if you said no.
No, it really is. My answer is just no. But I really was. To me, it was just hanging out with them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I mean, I'm listening to you guys talk, and I'm not interjecting because I'm like, yes. Like watching the breakup and realizing that, just like I said, it's like hanging out with the high school band that's practicing in their room, and you realize they kind of broke up for the same reason. Like, it's just, this isn't what we are anymore, and like, let's move on. And we forget that, like, just because they were mega stars, they're still just people, and at some point they reached an end of this group that was doing the same thing over and over, and although we all wish that they kept going and made more of the same thing, they were like, no, we don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah,
and it really is like, that's like the end of it is we're just kind of done. Okay. And then, like, poor Yoko, she doesn't deserve all the hate that comes her way, and I knew that before, but now it's even more so like, poor Yoko. Like, you're just the crazy lady who was hanging out with them, and we all wish we could have been there too. So, like, we're just jealous is all it is. So we blame her for the breakup, but we're just jealous that we weren't there screaming on the record. That's all.
They're jealous of her calligraphy. That was beautiful.
I don't know. I've got some mad handwriting skills, so maybe I could keep up with that one. But no, I would love to say, let me give you my deep thoughts on this one particular piece. But it was like a billion hours.
How did you feel as a former officer of the law, watching those cops having to break up the Beatles during their rooftop concert? Were you, for a minute, glad that you didn't have to be that guy?
So, like, how I said we were all jealous of Yoko and just wish we were there.
Yeah.
We're all just, thank God we didn't have to be those poor people. Like, like for real. All the Beatles mania stuff. Like, I can't imagine. Let's do a random law enforcement POV. Just Beatles mania in general. Like, to be the police officer who's got to, like, carry out the woman that passed out because she's screaming at somebody, and you're like, I've been working for 12 hours straight, and this is why I'm not home right now with my family. Like,
I'm on fainting teen girl detail.
Yeah.
just carrying them, like, shoulder to shoulder, like, just throw them in the...
I can imagine. I could definitely imagine if you could go back in time and talk to them. It's like, so what do you guys think about the Beatles? I hate the Beatles. Like, I want to go home at the end of my shift, and now I got to go watch these people like storm cars and pass out and scream and yell. And, yeah, so
One
I'm
thing,
very, very glad.
One thing I noticed about the police officers is something that I have experienced several times in my encounters with law enforcement, is that there's always two types of police officers that show up, and they usually show up together. One is like Mr. By the Book. Like, we've got to do it's the law, it's the rules, we got to do it. And then there's the other guy who kind of street smart and knows really what's going on and decides to kind of like, I don't know. Because like this one time I was almost arrested for something. That was my situation.
For something.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Dumpster diving. And that's a story. I was slammed up against the side of a car.
Oh boy.
But like there was the cop who put me against the car was very much Mr. By the books. Then there was the other guy who clearly knew that we were up to something, and he decided that forcing us to dig through trash was much more interesting than like calling it in. So, but I just noticed during the Beatles rooftop concert, that deal, there's one cop that is kind of, you can just sort of tell from his demeanor that he's like, what's the big deal? Like, I know I have to do this, but and then you can also tell he's like, I know they're giving me the runaround right now. I know they're stalling. I know what's happening here. We'll get to it eventually. And he kind of is like, I kind of wish I could just listen to what's going on out there.
It is pretty good. It is pretty.
Yeah, you can tell there was that one cop that was sort of like that. Yeah. But the main one that you see is the one that's like keeps wanting to like talk specifically to Paul McCartney or whatever.
Yeah, it wasn't even really the cops who ended it, right? It was, what was his name? Was it Mal?
Mal Evans.
Yeah, because I saw he's like by their amplifiers. He started turning them down.
And was it George who just straight up turned it back up? It's like,
yeah,
no.
I could see in Paul McCartney's eyes that he was hoping those cops would haul them off.
That's what they wanted.
Yeah,
they did want to get arrested.
Yeah.
You forget the third kind of cop that way back in the day when we used to record in an office together in the same state. Remember those days? Good old days?
I remember those days.
And we'd finish at like midnight when we were supposed to be gone, and we're in this dark parking lot because we stayed way after the building closed down. And you're forgetting the third policeman who pulls up, shines his spotlight on you, and is like, look, if you're going to loiter, at least drop a lure, because Pokemon Go had come out the day before.
Oh, yeah. That's a
he's wanting to play.
A street smart cop, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that cop wasn't even in Apple Studios. He was just outside.
Yeah.
Listening.
Pretending like he doesn't hear anything, but he's also listening intently.
Here's the thing. I was talking to Kane about this. It's like, the movie, of course, presents the rooftop. We know the historical element behind the rooftop concert, right? Yeah. But for a moment, I tried to put myself in the perspective of the old woman who got interrupted from her nap and was very upset about it. Yeah. And I realized it's very contextual how my feeling is on a band playing a rooftop concert. Because it's the Beatles. All right, it's the Beatles. If it were Nickelback... If it were Creed,
Hollywood Undead,
if it were, it depends on the band, right?
21 Pilots,
if Imagine Dragons, if Machine Gun Kelly tried that nonsense,
yeah,
I would look for Megan Fox, and then I'd call the police. That's this one.
Billy Joel, no, he's out of there.
What?
Billy Joel. I only listen to doo-wop Billy Joel, nothing else.
We're strictly 80s Joel. Uptown Girl. I wish I could play that too. I don't know any Joel songs.
Yeah.
I'm actually not a very good guitarist. I just hope everybody knows that.
Before I go on, I do want to mention, we've mentioned him a couple of times, Michael Lindsay Hogg, who this whole thing wouldn't have happened at all if it wasn't for him. He caught so much footage. I think it was like 60 hours, right? Is that the number?
Yeah, it was like 60 hours of footage, and then he has like 150 hours of just audio.
Yeah. So the things I heard that he employed, he didn't want them to really acknowledge that they were being filmed. And so some of the tactics he employed was he did things like, these are old film cameras, so they had like a red light to tell you when they were filming. He would tape up the red light. He would tell the Beatles that, hey, we're all going on break, but then they'd like leave one of the crew members behind to pretend like he's not filming, just to see what they can get when they're not around. And then, of course, the big famous one is putting the microphone in that flower pot while John and Paul were having a very intimate conversation. I mean, he's a little stinker, that guy, that Michael Hogg. He really, but I think he did a great job, even though he was kind of insane. Like his ideas of like doing a concert in Libya, that Coliseum, or like what did he say? He wanted to do it at a children's hospital, but not like one with sick kid, but like kids with like broken arms. Like,
yeah, the right kind of sick kid.
Yeah, but
not terminal.
Yeah, but like, let it be aside. His actual process of capturing everything is really amazing and awesome, and I definitely I commend him for getting everything that he caught, and that this is just all stowed away for so long. And of course, Peter Jackson came in, and I'm this is so. It almost feels like this is what Peter Jackson this is what he's been preparing for.
Mm-hmm.
Most people would probably be preparing for Lord of the Rings. No, not Peter Jackson. He had to do Lord of the Rings first. Like, that was his crawling, right? And I think it's really interesting when you kind of look back at his career and some of his more important works, like Lord of the Rings, was just like sort of compiling and putting together what's already been there, and to show everybody that people maybe don't really know much about, right? And then he made a documentary a few years ago. What was it called? Crap.
Oh, you're talking about the World War I documentary?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I think it's called They'll Never Grow Old.
That's it.
Yeah, where it's colorized and beautiful high definition. I haven't seen it personally, but I hear it's amazing. Same thing. And that's just like, and now he's doing this, where it's like it's already there. He just has to put it out there as a story. But he doesn't in the true Peter Jackson way, where it's like, no, it's got to be the real story. I can't cut any corners. We got to show it the way it really is. And I've heard people like actually ask him, like, is there a 2.5 hour version of this? And he's like, no. Like, you can't. Like, because the most important thing in this documentary, first of all, is the rooftop concert. And the rooftop concert is 40 minutes long. So that means, and the actual recording of everything, it was like 20 days. So that's like 2 minutes per day leading up to a 40-minute concert for a 2.5 hour long version of this. It just wouldn't work. So I don't know. I don't think Peter Jackson is necessarily being indulgent when he makes it like this. I think he just understands like this is what it has to be, and I think it comes from being so intimate with Lord of the Rings and that documentary he made, They'll Never Grow Old, and perhaps even maybe even King Kong. Maybe this means I need to go easier on King Kong's runtime, because I do think that's like the worst thing about that movie. I don't know.
That movie's a slog.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think it's fascinating that it was Peter Jackson that did this, and it really does feel like he's the only one who could have done it. And I'm now really interested in seeing like where his career goes, and I hope he does more interesting things, not just like, I'm sure Lovely Bones is good. I haven't seen it. But I hope this opens doors to, much like James Cameron is now more of an experimental filmmaker than anyone out there at this point.
I know.
He's ascending to his James Cameron plane, is what Peter Jackson is doing.
By the way, Avatar 2 is coming out this summer. And there's no trailer. We don't even know the title. Or December. It's coming out December.
Oh boy. I know Matt's excited about that.
I'm excited about it.
Beyond words excited.
I've got my guy up there.
I can't wait. No, I can't even pretend. Like, I just don't care. But maybe it'll win. Like, maybe it'll win me over. Chuck, maybe the second one's what it's all about.
It's gonna be awesome.
We'll find out. I'll be there.
Or it's James
How
Cameron's
about that
first
Spider-Man
dud.
movie?
Hey, let me tell you about Spider-Man No Way Home. I was excited last night because I put on the Amazon Plus and Amazon TV or Prime TV, whatever they call it, Prime Video, whatever. I put it on.
The Amazon Plus.
Yeah, whatever. And there was like, this big banner for Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, oh my gosh, it's on here. I'm going to watch it. I hit it. It was like, buy it for $20.
$20.
Like, you misled me. You made me think that I could watch it.
Yeah.
You can for $20.
Yeah, but like I thought it was included with my thing. So I need to go to the theater and watch it. I was going to see the Batman. I still haven't seen that yet. But
either.
We're so bad. So bad. Here we are. There's these big things that we weren't talking about those. We're talking about Get Back.
I haven't watched it because I'm still kind of nervous about the pandemic. Like, it's just me, you know. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. It's the rigmarole.
Well, you live in a nice state, okay? You live in a state where people actually care about it.
True.
But no, I mean, I'm excited to see where Peter Jackson goes. Hopefully, it's something that resembles the Star Wars Star Cruiser, somewhere between the Star Wars Star Cruiser and the World of Pandora.
You get a Beatles theme park.
Only it's going to be like he's really going back to his roots, and it's going to be horror.
It just makes Dead Alive.
You can actually go into Dead Alive and use your lawnmower to cut up all your loved ones.
So, back to Get Back. What else we got to talk about here, JP?
Let's get back to Get Back.
Oh, how about just the music? Like, just I mean, I could have used about 5 more recordings of Get Back. I won't lie.
I will say, it did get repetitive having to hear the same songs over and over again.
Yeah, Get Back and Don't Let Me Down, I think, were the two, right? Yeah.
And to hear that, I mean, it's kind of cool to hear some of the incremental changes, but for the most part, it's...
Yeah, and didn't they perform Get Back like 3 times on the roof?
Yes, I was expecting the entire album to be performed on the roof. And when they kept playing the same songs over, I'm like, what the heck? Because I thought that was the whole idea, is they were going to play the whole album on the roof, but they just did the multiple takes of the songs that they had really locked in so they could get multiple takes of it.
I will say one thing that really sticks out in terms of the creative process, you know, that I'm starting to learn that I wish was more apparent to me when I was trying to learn how to become a filmmaker, which is that, like, sometimes you just got to have your own process.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just got to, like, let it out of you. Like, it's something that already exists inside you that you just need to let out. Like, the way he comes up with Get Back, it's just amazing. Like, there was a time when there was no Get Back, and then all of a sudden it's just there.
Yeah, within like 45 seconds, Get Back emerges.
And then it's like a legendary song, like everybody loves. And sure, I mean, that comes from years and years and years and years of experience. But at the same time, like, you know, I think back to when I was trying to learn how to be a screenwriter, and they really drilled into this process of, like, okay, first you need to come up with a log line, then you need to come up with an outline, then you need to come up with a treatment, and then you can start writing your script. Don't do it without a roadmap, blah blah blah. But then I'm starting to learn all these other processes from, like, all these other people. Like when we talk about Back to the Future, Bob Gale, the way he wrote Back to the Future was just like, he came up with the idea, and then he just kind of brainstormed scenes, wrote them down on a note card, put them on the wall, rearranged them. It's like, okay, I think we need to have this scene, we'll put that there. It's like the same thing. It's like, I feel like, and we talked about this in our future episode about creativity in our riff session, where there's a sort of rigidness that we kind of want to instill in people, because there needs to be this, you need to be a prodigy in order to be a successful artist, or a creative that's worth their salt, instead of actually fostering creativity. It's like we're trying to create a rigid road for you to walk down, instead of just being like, no, who are you? You know, what do you love? What do you hate? Put it out there, and then just keep doing it until it's good.
Yeah, and that's And I will say too, what I found fascinating during watching this about the creative process is like the refining process.
Yeah.
So I remember, what was it? Is it George complaining, or no, it was John complaining, where he was like, if I have to play chords where like I'm going across like 5 frets, like that's gonna kill me, right? Like, so they're talking about how they need to adjust things so that it doesn't, just your physical limitations of your hand in playing an instrument. But I also like there's a part where George and Ringo are talking about a song. Maybe it's Octopus's Garden. I don't remember. But they make a comment like George makes a comment. He's like, well, we have to have another chord in the progression because you can't go from like an A to an A to an F smoothly. I don't remember the exact chords. So you need like a chord in the middle to help facilitate the transition. And of course, it has to be within a certain range of notes and all. Like, so it's just kind of cool to see all of that, to consider the way that music as a language works in terms of, accounting for just the actual mechanics of your hand playing an instrument, and just how that has to be, or talking about how like you have to use certain vocal inflections because that's how they work with the notation. You can't just say anything. You have to. That was just really cool to me.
I think that's all part of also understanding what makes like the difference between a pop artist and people who change music is people who have an understanding on a level that's like human in a sense. Like, no, we're human beings. We have to be able to play this, so we need to do it this way. But we can also do it that way and make it sound great and make it work and make it incredible. Like, there's a depth in understanding your craft to make it simple yet complex. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's like thinking more, making it more, like adding more to it in order to make it easier to do. And there's something about that that's like I don't know. There's something there that
it's kind of taking out the complexities, these sort of unnecessary complexities, like smoothing it over, right?
Well, and what also you're talking about like that with that piece. Paul McCartney is sort of like a walking encyclopedia of music. That was amazing to see. How he would just like pull out all these different songs from different artists and talk about what they were doing, and that, again, that I think that also establishes the difference between, like you said, like a pop artist and like a real like craftsman. I think my favorite in this, as we're talking about this, one of my favorite lines in the entire documentary is the part where I guess Paul's giving an interview with someone and he talks about the piano, and he says every song that is ever written and ever will be written is in this instrument. Like, all of music is in this instrument. That's a mind-blowing thought.
Yeah.
But he's like, it's right here, all of it. All of music is in this instrument.
Well, is your song ready to go?
Yeah, no, it's not. How annoying have I been this whole podcast, though?
I don't think it's annoying. I like it.
See, I'm a finger picker.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
That's what I like. I don't like using picks. I like the pick is a little too hard. I like the sound of a thumb strumming on the strings.
Yeah, that D chord really hurts my finger.
Is that a reference to the Garth Brooks thing? The devil?
How did you know? Chuck, you know me too well, buddy.
And that's funny because that's the D chord right there. It's but
Fred Slacks is a winner. Must be really humid in here. All right, there it is.
Just 2 chords right there. Here we go. Just E and A minor. Here.
Are we doing another 8 hours of hanging out watching somebody create music? Is that what's happening right now?
I'm just starting knitting. Start doing calligraphy.
I'll just start yelling.
Okay, what you could do though is
the soothing sounds of Padre.
Padre.
That's not really a drop D, but
What is happening right now?
I don't know. I'm like, all right, okay, yeah. That's something. I hope that's not a real song because I don't recognize it.
No, I'm just messing around.
I'm just that good, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, there is no song.
Okay, that's fine.
Unless we
that's
just want to. Oh, here we go. We got 2 chords. Here we go. How long does a song have to be for it to be a song? Right? Can it be 15 seconds?
4 minutes.
That's a jingle.
Kind of get the Barracuda strum. No, okay, but
yeah. I'm not a good improviser. I'm sorry, I can't join in and start singing. I'm not like Dan Harmon who could like freestyle rap. Not that he was really able to.
We got back. I don't know.
It's fine. It's fine.
We need Keelan.
I'll take the pressure off of you. So, guys, 200 episodes. We did it. We made it.
Are we done talking about Get Back?
Usually, well, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to say. I'm kind of out of things.
I don't know. Okay, we did a 200 episode song.
200 episodes, and this is the one that breaks us up. Bye, guys.
Nah. But we did it. 200. It is crazy to think 200 episodes for a thing that was just like. I sent a text message to Matt. So right. We should have a podcast.
Was that well? I remember it. I remember unfolding as the 3 of us. I think we're a Havana hideout.
That's what it was.
And you started pitching this idea as just sort of a hypothetical. And I remember not having much interest in it because I'm like, I can't do like a religious podcast. I would have nothing to say. So
meanwhile, we can't get him to shut up for 200 episodes.
but I was in a time in my life where I was obsessed with podcasts, so I liked the idea of doing a podcast. And you kind of brought up ideas of like sort of tying in, 80s nostalgia and stuff, and the kind of nerd stuff that was kind of taking off at the time. And I remember thinking, yeah, we should just try it. And I'll be like Jeff Davis in Harmontown, meaning I'm just going to be the guy that sort of asks questions.
Right.
And gets you guys talking.
Yeah, because
I think you guys even mentioned, like, because this is after we had seen the 70mm presentation of Hateful Eight.
Yes.
And during the intermission, you guys started talking across me. I was between the two of you. You started talking like behind me and in front of me. It was kind of funny. And I think you were
like that of a Seinfeld when they sit at the bar instead of the booth, and they're like, hey, "Who's talking?"
I don't know if that was after or before you pitched it. Not sure.
Probably
but that is sort of
because I can distinctly remember when the idea popped in my head. I was at the Chapel St. Andrew in Boca. I was walking into the library, and I just had this thought. I was just like, you know what? Because I was thinking about, the fact that the degree of a master in divinity. It's like master of divinity. Like that was always sort of a joke that a few of us made when we graduated. And so it's like, oh, but that's like that Masters of the Universe. And I was thinking about the name, and I was like, we should have a podcast. And I was thinking about Matt. And I was like, you know what? Well, Matt's finishing up a degree. I think you were still finishing it up or near finishing it up. And I was like, and he's a Baptist, and I'm an Episcopalian. I said, oh, but maybe we should have a podcast where it's just basically like Matt as a Baptist and me as an Episcopalian talking about various Bible theology sort of things. And we call it Masters of Divinity because we both have those degrees, though I was incorrect in you having that degree. You have a master's in theology. But so I thought Masters of Divinity, like, oh, it's going to highlight Matt and I being, our different perspectives on our various,
Because you had a couple of friends who were running a podcast, too.
Yeah, 2 priests in a pod. Yeah, my friends Jeff and my seminary colleagues, Jeff and Jimmy. And
it's a very scholarly podcast. It's very...
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking about. And then, of course, bringing in JP changed the whole thing, right? Because JP, the idea of making it into like a podcast. And then I think it was the Hateful Eight thing, Matt and I talking, and I think, was it even you who were like, this could be the podcast?
I don't know. I think we all kind of were like, are we podcasting right now?
Yeah. Right? It's like you were sort of like the George in that episode of Seinfeld when George is like, this should be the show.
Yeah.
What we're doing right now is nothing.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it played out, but I'm remembering everything as you're talking about. Other than I do remember Havana Hideouts, where the idea came up. I don't remember the night at Hateful Eight, but
I believe we were pounding
remember
sangria.
I can remember
were
it
going
as you're
through
talking,
some sangria.
and I can also say that I believe it because now we cannot hang out or talk to each other without podcasting. Whether it's recording or not, it's what we do.
It's true.
So,
but yeah, we've come a long way. I mean, it is a milestone for us. It is kind of funny though, because a lot of podcasts just started around the same time we did. They're actually like episode 500. we had a few setbacks along the way, little breaks here and there.
Hey man, it's our process.
Yeah,
it's our process. We take a meandering.
We're the Terrence Malick of podcast.
There we go. One thing about podcasting I don't understand is seasons. Why do people do seasons?
Probably for their own sanity is my conclusion. I think. Yeah.
Because there's one podcast Kane and I listen to called
JP's like, I was going to suggest seasons, but now I can't. So thanks a lot, Chuck.
We can do it. That's why I just don't understand it, because it's not like a TV show where you have seasons, because you need to block out the time for like the whole process of creating a TV show. It's just us and microphones. I don't know why you need seasons.
I mean, one podcast I listen to does seasons. They don't play out that way, but they do take seasonal breaks. But they have work that's going on while they're taking that break.
I know a lot of podcasts that do that, but they don't actually take any kind of break. They just
me too.
Arbitrarily say like, oh, then we're in season 3 now or whatever. So I just didn't understand, if that's like a thing. If we should do that, that'd be pretty funny. This is the last episode of season 1.
200 episodes and we're as fascinating as ever.
That would be kind of funny. Season 1 in the can, boys.
And we should end it with the music from Best of Both Worlds, season episode 1.
Yeah. No. Okay. Well, I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts on Get Back. Or...
I feel like we could talk about Get Back more.
Probably.
Because part of this too is that this was one of the first Music Mayhem albums that we ever talked about. I
forgot to mention, I have not gone back to listen to Let It Be, but I do remember us trying to really, really translate like what they were saying secretly to each other. Like don't let me down. Like, no man, they're saying don't let me down, bro. Don't let me down during this album. But I'd be really fascinated. So maybe whoever's listening, maybe you want to go back and listen to our Let It Be Naked album review during our first Music Mayhem, which I think was Matt's pick.
And was it our first Music Mayhem episode ever?
No, I think I was number 1 with Green Day.
Dookie.
And then we did Let It Be because we were in the studio together.
Yeah.
Let It Be. And then we did Graceland.
Yes, because we were getting back to what we once were. Remember?
We also talked about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yes, because Matt and I went and saw that together, and we did like a little thing in the car, like we talked about it. I've definitely come to like the song Dig a Pony way more after watching the documentary.
Right.
I never listened to Dig a Pony much. It was one of those ones I always skipped. But man, that pre-chorus is like, all I want is you. It's very like Joe Cocker. I love it.
We definitely talk about the song in the episode if you want to go back and listen to
because yeah.
Okay, well,
sorry, that was like a weird.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
You're like, oh, there's the shirtless guy with the guitar just talking about whatever he wants to talk about now.
Padre going off.
Padre going off. Is that my new name, Padre?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
The Hawaiian term for a priest is kahu.
Really? That's good. Nice. Well,
that's great. No one asked. Carry on.
Well, so I want to thank all of our listeners. If you've been listening to us from the beginning, if you've listened to every single episode, good on you, man. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting us, whether it's financially, throwing us a few bucks here and there, or just, being a cheerleader and leaving comments and, just listening, I guess, and letting us be a part of your life in a way, making that commute a little easier and giving you something to listen to while you do whatever it is you do. We're very glad we could be a part of that, and we're glad to have you with us as we explore these regions of theology and pop culture, even though they're pretty exclusive. Like, we haven't really talked about theology in this episode. But that's okay. That's what we're all about.
We could have talked about the creative process and creator, and
we could have done that. Let's put a pin in that. Let's put a pin in that.
We'll circle back.
Yeah. So
explore that with some of our corporate strategy or synergy.
Yeah. We'll bring it into the fold, So thank you for listening. And I want to thank Father Chuck for everything.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And I want to thank Matt for being here. I know people are excited to see you come back.
Yes.
Oh, me of all people.
So
such a handsome devil, such a handsome presence. I just love it.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Matt. I'm glad you're here. It's fun to record again.
Thanks.
Hey, what are we doing next week?
Are we done we still recording? I don't know. The red light on, or did you cover it up?
It's in the foyer, filming the cops as they're coming into the recording right now. So next week, I think we should maybe have a riff session.
I feel that feels very, JP, that feels very, very like fortuitous. Feels very like prescient.
Yeah, I think maybe we should just we've talked a lot about the creative process in this episode. Maybe next week we can kind of riff on being creative.
Yeah.
I don't know. It almost feels like you already recorded it. I don't know.
Feels that
That's
way.
Eerie. That's eerie.
When you're on top of things, it just kind of feels that way. I think. When you've been podcasting as long as I have, it just kind of comes out. Like. So.
What if we decide to be a little proactive and talk about what are we going to talk about in 2 weeks?
I don't know.
See,
we're going to talk about the Rolling Stones.
The Rolling Stones.
We're going to talk about Shine a Light by the Rolling Stones.
Their lost film.
Oh, we didn't talk about the other Beatles movies.
Help.
Hard Day's Night, Magical Mystery Tour.
There, we talked about them. Bye.
Yellow Submarine.
Only one of them has a Criterion release, and that's A Hard Day's Night. So, okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. And to our audience, thank you so much for listening. Everyone, please stay safe out there. Have a wonderful week. Good journey.
Good journey.
Good journey.